So Living Distinctive Lives, as Maggie suggested, is a small family-governed group. They've been set up to really just work with each of their families, and they've come together with the same vision, and their vision was that each of their children wanted to live a meaningful life in community and wanted to live in their own home. So it was a very simple concept that brought these families together. And it's 10 years on, and they're still working towards those goals, and many of them achieving them at different levels and over different periods of time. So where they want to live, who they'd like to live with, and how they can be supported in their own arrangements was always of utmost importance for each of their children. And the other thing that these group of families have learnt over their time together was that housing and even the creation of a home really meant nothing unless it was embedded within community in a very real way, and unless it meant that it was really talking to that person and who they were as a person. Their whole of life was important. Who they were, their likes, their dislikes, who their family was, what they loved to do, what their dreams were. All of these things were of utmost importance, and the housing piece was something that was important, but you couldn't just focus on housing without focusing on the whole of this person's life. So LDL, a couple of key aims, is to create the maximum opportunity for people to be genuinely included. And you've heard story after story of this over the weekend, and so that's what these families are trying for as well with their adult children. And by working with community. So they've always tried to take that step of working with their community rather than with services as such, to build what has meaning for them individually. And LDL also, as a group, as it becomes like a peer group of support as well, and so they always are supporting each other to extend and grow, and here's a prime example of it sitting up on the stage before you today. So just wanting to share a couple of principles that helped guide LDL in its journey, and another word for principles that we could use would be values, and these values truly underpin these families' work with their sons and daughters. And that is that a circle of supportive people is essential to the well-being of individual and of community. And we've seen that time and time again in the other presentations over the week. That all individuals have a right to a meaningful life in community. And that's what so much of us actually strive for and really hold as dear in all of our lives. All individuals have the right to decide where they want to live, who they want to live with, and how they want to create that life. Very simple, natural desires that we all have. That home is about being connected to community and having valuable roles and relationships. So that piece again about connection and social inclusion, we can couch these in terms that have a connotation, but what it really means is that we're social beings and we like to share our lives and our loves with each other. That life planning should be creative and driven by the individual and those closest to them. And so this is that idea that, you know, when you plan your life, you might look at where you are right now and you start to make plans and you throw dreams out about what your life looks like, and it starts to look like that. And when you get there, you're happy and you're satisfied, and then it changes. Then you have bigger dreams and more goals. And this is what these families are also aware of, that the little steps that it takes along the journey, at no juncture in time is that stagnant. They are always going to continue to dream and hence continue to have to plan for where they're heading and for what that life looks like. And the needs and preferences of individuals change over time, and they should be supported through these changes to ensure a satisfying life. And so that's similar again, but on a very personal level. So each of our needs changes as we grow and move through life. And these families want to identify that and honour and celebrate those changes, and also do what they can to create innovative ways of supporting people as their needs do change and grow. So very briefly, you can see the history there, but essentially, Jackie, did you want to share a little bit about how LDL began? Jackie and Dee were paramount in this process.
We've got a daughter who's almost 31, and she said to us when she was 18, to my husband and I, I'm not going to live in a group home, which we'd always envisaged would be the case. We thought she would live in a group home. And I said, okay, well, if you don't want to do that, what do you want to do? And she said, well, I don't know, but I'm not going to live in a place with another person with a disability. And I don't want to live with you two anymore, or not for much longer. I thought, oh God, what are we going to do? So I just didn't know what the answer was. So what I did was I got in contact with Deb Roger from Belonging Matters, and I then went to quite a few talks, a lot of them Michael Kendrick, who's here today, as you know, and some other people. And I started to realise that overseas they were doing a lot of individualised housing. So Deb rang me one day and she said, there's an innovation housing grant coming out from the department. What about if we'd had many talks with Deb about how we would make this happen for Diane. And so what we did was we applied for the grant, and the grant was given to 10 different 10 different groups. And we were all to come up with ways of being able to achieve individualised housing, each group doing it in their own way. There were only 2 out of those groups that consisted of families. Most of them were services. And every 3-4 months, we all had to get together and with DHS as a group and report on what we were achieving. And I remember one day, one of the men stood up and he said, well, we've got all these families in houses. So we've achieved our goals, but every one of them is lonely. So we really took a lot of notice of that and realised that, yes, we have to do a lot more than just a house or just a building. It has to consist, as Teresa said, being embedded into the community. And usually we try and make it the community that they're actually already living in and know the people around. So that's how we actually got started. That formed Living Distinctive Lives from there, and then the department did an assessment or an evaluation of those 10 groups, and we were one of the ones that were fortunate to get a recurrent funding. Now that funding is actually used to pay for Teresa's role for 20 hours a week, and she then helps each individual family in their own. So even though we're a group, we're each of us doing our own thing in our own suburb with our own people. So that's how we got started. So
thank you, Jackie. And this is a really brief look at what we kind of look like. And it's very organic. It's not a structure, it's not an organisation, it's a small family-governed group. We sit around, we have coffees, we have catch-ups once a month, which is our governance group meeting, and we discuss and talk, and these parents share. They share about their lives, their successes, their hardships, their struggles, and their solutions to those struggles. And here we are, just so you can see here, it's very much about community. And the governance group, so this is this group of families, and I won't talk a lot about this, but they do come together and share with each other and support each other. And they also help guide their own vision as a group, but they also help each other brainstorm and think about their own individual arrangements and what they're doing with their own families. And as I've mentioned, my role we've changed the name. It's really not a coordination role at all. It's, I'm trying to facilitate and support this group of families to do the work that they're visioning and that their kids are dreaming. So I support them in that way as a group, but also individually. This was someone else's learnings along the way, so I'm not going to read that, but her learnings were a lot about planning, making sure families have the information that families need, and that's really important. And one of my learnings, I guess, along the way has been about the creativity and the resilience of families, and that every single one of us is a creator. That's what we do every day. We're creating, we're dreaming, we're building our lives. And I guess what I see and what I often, part of my job is to try to help families to be dreaming from a place of of love and hope, as opposed to a place of fear and constriction, of despair. And those moments happen in our lives. They're there, but always to be conscious that as we're dreaming, as we're trying to take that next step forward, we're doing it from a place of the love of our son or daughter, or the love of that sibling or the person that we care for, and that vision that we hold for them of their future, rather than focusing on their support needs or what's hard. And as we do that, the more you do that, the greater the life that that person can create for themselves becomes. And they become more embedded in their own vision of themselves in a good life. And you've heard that time and time again today in all of the presentations, people talking about positive mindsets, and the way they approach their attitudes, the notion of gratitude. All of these things are highly important in this work. All right, I'm going to move on. That's enough about LDL per se, and we're going to start to talk about Mike. Rosie's going to come up and share a little bit about Michael, who's her son.
Hi everyone, I'm Rosie Reid. My son is Mike. He's a 33-year-old with an intellectual disability. He has Down syndrome and autism, and he's non-verbal. We're very, very excited, emotionally turmoiled. In the last 3 weeks, he's moved into his own home. This has... This has taken 7 years of planning. And all the wonderful backup from Teresa and all the other families has been just mind-boggling. We were very fortunate. Mike has siblings, a brother who's in his late 20s and a sister in early 30s. His brother has recently just bought his first home and actually offered it to Mike to use, to rent. So we've just recently found 3 wonderful housemates to move in with him. One gentleman said to me, I saw this and I did a 360 when I read the advertisement and thought, I can actually help someone. And we thought, wow, this is just fantastic. This gentleman is just so caring, compassionate, and wants to help. So Mike is with he and another lass who was volunteering at an organisation who wanted to help and wanted to move home. So she's moved in. They both actually have reduced rent. Mike pays full rent and the 4th person pays full rent. So my son, who's interstate trying to pay for his home, is going to have full rent. Over time we had circles of support which were quite large, with people of our age and siblings, friends and everybody. And then people decided that things were going to change, that they weren't quite as interested. Some people moved away. And then a small committed group wanted to form. So we call them Team Mike. So we get together roughly every 6 to 8 weeks and discuss everything. The first day Mike moved into his home, there was little furniture around and he did this huge circle in the living room. Oh, free, I'm free. No parents.
And as you can gather, there is a lot of work that goes behind the scenes, and it's a very exciting venture because we've not ever trialled a model in this way before. We've had lots of housemates living with people in the past, but often just kind of one-on-one. And more the flavour and the shift that we're seeing lately is that people are wanting to live with more than one person. Some are wanting to live alone as well. That's another thing that's happening in the group. But this is a new thing for us, so we're going to be supporting this whole household of people to, create life.
A couple of years ago, Deb asked if we could make a story about Diane and her house and where she was in her house. And the reason that arose was that the Human Rights Commission were having their 20th anniversary of when they had equal rights for people with disabilities. And in celebration of that, they decided to have 20 stories of people with disabilities who have achieved better things in their life due to this equal opportunity. And so Deanne had her story made by Owen and Deb and had a lovely time doing it too, I must say. So this is her story. So.
Paediatrician said that she had ataxic cerebral palsy mild, that she had a lot of intellectual delays as well, and that she would probably never read or write and all that sort of thing. And he sort of said, you know, go put her with her own kind and get on with your life, which we were quite devastated with, but we didn't do that.
Okay, I'll tell you. I go into the shop and ask and tell them, welcome to the Boorandarra community.
Well, it was when she turned 18. She said to me, I'm not going to live with you for the rest of my life. You know, in the family home, she said, but I'm not going to live with a carer, and I'm not going to live in a group home, and I'm not going to live with another person with a disability. And I thought, oh, well, what alternatives do we have? And I said, well, what do you want to do? And she said, I want to live in a normal place with other people, just like my brothers do.
It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant for my independence.
Her independence has grown remarkably. She continues to move around the community in Glenferrie Road. She's in a lot of the shops. Everyone knows her very well. She's very comfortable.
You turned 31 this year.
Yes.
Can you believe it? Can you believe it?
What's the date today?
20th of the 11th, which I cannot believe that. Can you?
I can't believe it.
G'day there.
Hello, Diesel, how are you?
Good, thanks, and you?
Good. Ready for a big session?
Sure am.
Let's rock and roll. England, Australia, England, Australia. Speed those legs up, speed those legs up. Well done.
She's gained admiration of the people that have lived with her, and I think they, most of the time, enjoy being with her.
Hey, darling, how was your day?
Good, thanks, and yours?
Oh, yeah, not too bad, eh? How was work?
Busy.
Busy, yeah, mine too, actually.
They get a very nice unit. It's a place where they can call home. It's just a normal situation of sharing a place together.
Usually my friends ask more about Dee than they do about me sometimes, I think. So no, it's really great. And I mean, Dee's not just a flatmate to me, she's a friend, you know, so we all hang out together, which is really cool.
How important is it for Dee to work?
Very important. Again, she models her life on what her brothers do. And she said she just wanted a job like her brothers.
When I first met Dee about 10 years ago, she'd just left special developmental school and she had this passion for her local community. However, most of the services that were offered to her were going to segregate her from her local community, and basically she'd be in congregate care with other people with a disability. Our role really was to help Dee and her family hold on to a vision for a typical life and to create the supports that would enable that to happen.
I'll do this end, you do that end, okay?
Yeah, sure thing.
Alright, that's great, Dee.
Dee has grown in confidence to the extent where she is happy to stay in the flat by herself at times. Dee's also able to advocate for herself and describe and articulate her dreams and goals. What have you been working on?
My budget for Graceland also.
Yeah, do you want to show me?
This is for 18 days, right?
Yeah.
From Melbourne to LA.
Yeah. And then you've got to get another flight from LA.
Another flight from LA to Memphis.
When you look at Dee's life, she doesn't just access the community, she actually belongs to the community, and you can see that through the relationships that she has. I think not only does the community bring out the best in Dee, but she brings out the best in community.
I guess just to live a happy, fulfilling life, whatever form that might take. And to get overseas to Graceland.
What's the best thing about Elvis?
He's a bit of a spunk. And his music and his movies.
When I joined 5 years ago, it's probably 6 years ago, all the families had their special needs son or daughter living at home with mum and dad, and there's 5 now living independently. So I think that shouts a huge success, and there've been little steps for big growth, like that song, From Little Things, Big Things Grow, and to hold the vision has been probably the strongest point, and the strength that has come from the governance group by meeting monthly, sharing the hardships each month. There are lots of big steps and challenges, but it's all very positive and with lots of hiccups, but it has had enormous success. So I could not have thought it was even possible when our daughter, who's got acquired brain injury from a stroke at the age of 22, she's now 39, I wouldn't have thought there was even a possibility. Never thought outside the square. So these people help you think outside the square, and instead of going round corners, sharp corners, you go around beautiful curves. So I can only say thank you to joining LDL. So I'd like to invite any questions from anyone. We know it all now, of course. We haven't written the book though, so just wait. The practical challenges of finding the house, the place to live, advertising for the housemates, and over time we all thought a housemate, wonderful. But also over time we have all learnt so much more that it's very hard to live one-on-one, like a marriage, like teenagers. They have flatmates come and go, short term, very few at long term. So with the housemates, they have to be a very caring, special person to take on the role. They're only asked to provide around approximately 10 hours of support for originally it was free rent, but that's grown a little bit. And now we're branching into more than one housemate. 2, and Rosie's experiencing 3. So it's a very, very nurturing situation that we're growing. But to get the match of the people is tricky. I think we've made lots of mistakes. We advertise, and if we only get one reply, we're inclined to mould that person into our situation instead of waiting for the right person. So we've learnt as much as our recipients, haven't we?
Yeah, there's a lot of learning along the way that's happened with each of the families, and each of their situations are unique. So each of the kind of problem solving around each of those things as they arise is very unique as well. Any other questions?
Yes, look, I just wanted to ask you, this Living Distinctive Lives group, how does the average parent with a young adult living at home who they want to eventually transition to living independently, how would they go about getting some kind of grant? Because my experience is that there's very little help for people such as myself, and I regard myself as a fairly educated person who's out there finding out about things, but you're pretty much left to your own devices in terms of looking for housing and where to find it. So I'm probably like a lot of parents, apart from coming to things like today, I wouldn't know where to go to find information and resources about housing, and probably how to start the process and where to go. Yep.
No, that's a really, really good question. And each of these families, really, they're doing the work themselves. They are supported, but they're supported a lot by their own families, by their circles of support. They're trying to look at naturally who supports them. I encourage every single one of you to utilise the resources that Belonging Matters puts together, because it's of a very high quality in terms of inspiring and educating and informing. There is no one right way. The right way is the way that's right for your family, for your son or daughter, for you who wants to move out. That's the right way. And then what you want to do is bring in people who care for you and who can also hold that vision with you to make that happen. So these families, they're in a privileged position in a way, because what they've done, what they've chosen to do is come together and galvanise some support in doing that. But you can do that without funding per se. You can do that within your networks. And I guess the other hope is that things may change and there may be potential for other innovations like this. So join together, talk to each other,
Therese,
and use Belonging Matters.
Can I add something? If you get in touch with Belonging Matters, they have a very, very large network of families who have done similar work. And they can put you in contact with those families who are very willing to meet with you and share their story of their journey, how it got started, what they had to do, all the nitty-gritty bits and pieces. So the first point of call would be Belonging Matters.
With the practicalities of advertising for housemates, what's the venues do you advertise through, and how much emphasis do you put on the disability?
I heard the first part.
How much emphasis in the advertising do you put on disability?
No, not a lot. When we're advertising, we are generally, because what we're trying to do is create a home that's a good home. So we're advertising that. So generally the emphasis is on creating a home where you can share community spirit, or a home with heart has been something I've advertised before. So we're trying to bring people in who've got a community mind, who want to share with others.
And advertising through what avenues?
Places like Gumtree and Flatmate Finders, all the regular advertising venues. And one of the things we've learned is the more you spend time with someone before moving in is probably a good reflection of how successful the relationship will be long term.
Hello, I'm from Brisbane, and I just wanted to know whether the LDL is in Brisbane area to access any assistance there.
Yeah, because we're not a service, we're just a group of families that have come together and stayed together. But I would encourage other families to maybe start up a similar group. It is very worthwhile. It does help you to keep on track, because I think with all of us, we've strayed off the path a few times and sort of thought, oh, this is all too hard, we're just going to go the other way. But when you meet and you hear the inspiring stories, or you sort of talk about how you're feeling, and they say, come on, back on track. And with Teresa, she meets all of the families individually as well. And I think that sort of bonding will help you as well. So if you're able to join up with a few other families in your state, that would be terrific.
Hi. I was just going to say another thing that's really useful when you're just starting out, which is in my position, is the family retreat that Belonging Matters runs in the second year. So they run this conference 1 year, and then the next year they do a family retreat, which is working intensively with other families right through learning about how to plan, how to do all of the... And we did that with Darcy Elks. It was the most incredible experience, and I did that with my son. And that's been extremely empowering. And I think because at the start, just imagining, oh, well, how can I even start? Where do I start? It's kind of overwhelming. So that gives you a kind of a bit of a platform to take those first few steps. Yeah.
Thanks, Justin. And writing down your ideas. Every time you have an idea, write it down. If you have a dream, write it down. Like, start to just collect it, because it's all of those little pieces that come together 5 years later, and you'll look back at that and go, oh my goodness, look what we've created. One of the other things that the LDL group have talked a lot about as well within their circles is just trying to hold that vision as sacred, like finding other people in their networks who will continue to hold that vision as they, age and finally are no longer here and their son or daughter's living an amazing life, but to build those support networks around their child so that they will carry that vision on into the future.
Mine's just about housing. I'm just wondering how you source the housing that your sons or daughters live in. Do you find that yourself, or does Teresa find that for you or something?
No. No, we each look for our own places. And can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh. We each, as a family, look for the places, and I guess the main things that we try and look for is somewhere that's in the community area that our son or daughter is used to, near transport, and near shops. Because the worst, we've initially found a place that we thought was going to be terrific, and we found through experience that it was very isolated. And I remember years and years ago I heard a speaker in Queensland say that she advised that you don't rush in and buy something straight away. You might try 3, 4, maybe more rental places till you find exactly the thing that you'll never get it completely right, but so that you have a much better idea of the location, what works, how many bedrooms works, that sort of thing. So that's what we've done, and I think most of us have done that, and it's quite good. And how your son or daughter would like to live.
Just one quickly, just that's a very natural pathway that people follow. Most people would have experienced that. They move out of home, they go move in with a partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, or they go jump into a house with 4 or 5 other people. It's a very natural way, and you chop and change and you work out what you like and what you don't like. And that's what these guys are doing as well.
I think from this, what you've heard this afternoon is that it's a story of families who wanted to meet with other families to share their journey, their challenges and their learnings, which gave them a sense of belonging, a strong sense of belonging, community, friendship and fun along the way. And as Teresa said, it's a very normal pathway and things change, but each change in the pathway teaches your son or daughter immense lessons. And some are a bit difficult, some are more fun than others, but they're all learnings. So thank you very much to these wonderful ladies.